Drinking the Kool-Aid is a popular idiom used today, often in a political context, but it has a dark origin to the phrase. You might think you know the story of Jim Jones, but the popular account masks a more complicated and disturbing reality. Jim Jones ran the People's Temple from San Francisco, but the history of the church is a bit complicated. After starting in Indianapolis and traveling down to Brazil for a time, the main takeaway is that Jones always had one target for parishioners, or minorities. According to New West magazine, he mobilized San Francisco's African-American community in a crucial swing block. He was so powerful that few dared challenge him at the time, and he became what New West called one of the most politically potent religious leaders in the history of the state.
A guy like my dad found out what you wanted to hear and see and showed it to you.
In 1977, when the State Department seemed poised to intervene in a child custody case relating to Jonestown, San Francisco's politicians and local radicals leapt to defend Jones. Activist Angela Davis asked the San Francisco DA to drop all investigations into Jones, claiming his detractors wanted to stop his work for social justice. In a letter to then-President Jimmy Carter, California State Assembly member and future San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown called Jones a rare human being and a leader of the First Order.
Did his message at the time resonate with you?
Yes. No isms, no sexism, racism.
Even San Francisco Supervisor Harvey Milk begged Carter not to unleash the State Department on Jones. Had Jones not received so much protection from these people, as well as others like Mayor George Moscone and Governor Jerry Brown, People's Temple might have been investigated in 1977. Before it managed to flee to South America. Even there, it seems Jones expected the city to defend him. In a tape recorded just before the massacre, Jones said, "The people in San Francisco will not take our death in vain, you know." While Jonestown was portrayed as a multiracial utopia, the reality more closely resembled a Soviet labor camp. What's often overlooked is that Jones was an admirer of communism and his political ties were with the far left. Thanks to the survivors of the massacre, America learned how Jones mentally broke his followers through a combination of food deprivation, humiliation, and punishment straight out of the USSR and communist China.
Jones was fascinated by Hitler.
Jonestown survivor Eugene Smith wrote in a Newsweek op-ed that even when the cult was still in the US, Jones kept an iron grip. If you broke the rules, Jones dressed you down in front of everyone else. You didn't defend yourself, you just took it. Additionally, the residents were encouraged to criticize themselves to Jones, whether in person or in writing, a practice that was nearly identical to communist Chinese struggle sessions, meant to keep potential defectors in line. Life wasn't much better day to day.
I mean, I've never been on a plantation, but my God, it was a plantation. And he was the master.
Work consisted of 8 to 12-hour days in the jungle, with most meals consisting mainly of rice. Jonestown's inhabitants were kept on a low-protein diet, no doubt to keep them weak and pliable. What they were fed was a daily diet of propaganda about America's impending collapse and how bad life was elsewhere, kinda like North Korea does today. Among the worst forms of psychological torture Jones employed was the infamous White Night. This was Jones's way of sounding the alarm when he claimed the commune was about to come under attack. According to Smith, everyone would run to the pavilion and Jim Jones would talk and prophesize and go off on his rants and raves for hours and hours. He was strung out.
Dad, like any good demagogue, would conjure up fear.
Survivors gave varying descriptions of White Nights, but they were undoubtedly a form of manipulation. The meetings, apart from depriving people of sleep, kept everyone in a heightened state of stress regarding the possibility of the Guyanese army invading the commune and slaughtering the inhabitants. This reinforced people's loyalty to Jones, who promised protection but expected everyone to be ready to die for the cause. They practiced this too. A handful of White Nights were described as mass suicide rehearsals, the grim foreshadowing of the massacre that occurred in November of 1978. While San Francisco Democrats ran cover for Jim Jones, California Democratic Congressman Leo Ryan broke ranks with his party to investigate. After New West magazine published a damning article regarding abuse in Jones's cult, the People's Temple moved to Guyana, where members were reportedly forbidden to leave. Ryan went there to investigate and lost his life as a result. Before we go any further, we need to briefly explain the geography of Guyana. Jonestown is about 140 miles outside of the capital city of Georgetown, in the middle of the jungle. The nearest airport is 60 miles away, on what is mostly a dirt road over uneven terrain. So Jones chose this location to make it very hard to get in and out of his utopia, and that played to his advantage. Accompanying Ryan was journalist Tim Reiterman, who published his experiences in the San Francisco Examiner in 1978. Reiterman said Jones carefully choreographed the visit to make Jonestown look like a thriving settlement.
Whatever the comments are, there are some people here who believe that this is the best thing that ever happened to them in their whole life.
But the charade collapsed when two members handed Ryan a note begging the congressman to save them. At least 14 more joined them in their attempt to escape, something Jones wouldn't tolerate.
What is your wish today?
To
to go back home.
And where's home?
U.S.
Before the group even left Jonestown for the airport, things got very dicey. A few church loyalists inspected the trucks carrying the fleeing members, and that culminated with Congressman Ryan having a knife held to his throat. Cooler heads prevailed, and they all thought they were in the clear to return to the U.S. Unbeknownst to Ryan, however, a member of Jones's Red Brigade, Larry Layton, had joined the defectors as a saboteur. After arriving in Port Kaituma for their flight home, Layton signaled to a handful of men in a tractor who'd been following the party.
I turned to Larry Layton and I said, "They're killing everyone, they're killing everyone." And then he shot me 3 times, point blank.
In the resulting firefights, Ryan and several others were killed. In 1986, Layton would be the only person convicted for the killings. Speaking to a packed house at Lincoln Land Community College in 2014, People's Temple financial secretary and Jonestown survivor Deborah Layton declared nobody committed suicide at Jonestown. It was a massacre.
I mean, it's like 900 people, so no, it wasn't all suicide.
With those words, Layton busted Jonestown's most enduring myth, that it was history's largest mass suicide. In a 2021 Time magazine article, Odell Rhodes, who survived Jonestown, agreed. Although some followed Jones's order, 300 children and infants were forced to drink the cyanide-laced flavor aid. And yes, it wasn't even Kool-Aid, it was the other brand of sugary drink. If the kids weren't willing to sip the poison, their mothers were ordered to squirt the drink into their mouths with a syringe. The gruesome scene haunted witnesses for years, with one worker writing, "Can't sleep, can I get the small children out of my mind?"
This is a beautiful place here, and it's fun over here, it's really good.
As for the adults who didn't want to go along with the plan, Jones had a solution for them as well. Rhodes said he saw them herded back to the pavilion at gunpoint and coerced into drinking the poison. According to a Guyanese pathologist, up to 90% of Jonestown's victims were forcibly injected, shot, or strangled. So yes, Jonestown was really a mass murder. Among the few who definitively died by suicide was Jones himself. According to a Washington Post interview with his son Stephen, Jones was too prideful to let anyone else kill him. Despite the fact that the People's Temple drew its membership from the poorer echelons of American society, the group itself was far from poor. Jones's well-funded operation had around $27 million in total assets. These included $7 million in cash stashed away in Venezuelan and Panamanian bank accounts. According to the New York Times, the members of the People's Temple left all the liquid assets to the USSR with the explanation, "We, as communists, want our money to be a benefit for help to oppressed peoples all over the world, or in any way that your decision-making body sees fit." The Times report drew heavily on the activities of Jones loyalist Maria Casares, who was tasked with organizing the delivery of some of the funds to the Soviet embassy in the Guyanese capital. She visited Panama and Venezuela several times, suggesting she was Jones's primary financial go-between with the banks. Jones's wife Marceline left another note transferring money in Canada and the Bahamas. Again, a sign that the cult was far from poor. It doesn't appear the USSR ever received the money, and Moscow refused to comment on the matter. While most of the Jonestown massacre took place in the commune, a second, smaller massacre was taking place at the People's Temple headquarters in the Guyanese capital of Georgetown, at the hands of Jones loyalist Sharon Amos. According to her nephew August and his mother Robin, Jones ordered cult members at the Georgetown headquarters to kill themselves, but most of them refused. Amos, however, chose to carry out a horrific act on Jones's order with fellow cult member Charles Beichman. She took her 3 children to a bathroom where she did the unspeakable. We're not even going to speak it. Let's just say that she was loyal to Jones through and through. 10-year-old Stephanie Brown, who was supposed to be killed by Beichman, survived. Beichman only cut her superficially to make it seem to Amos that he had carried out Jones's orders. In doing so, he saved her life. At Beichman's trial, he received a reduced sentence of 5 years on an attempted murder charge thanks to his refusal to kill the girl. Why did the Guyanese government allow Jones and the People's Temple to settle there in the first place? The answer was political expediency, despite the flashing red warning signs that Jones wasn't all he claimed to be. In the 1970s, Guyana was a poor, underdeveloped country covered in inaccessible jungle. According to San Diego State University professor Khalil Muhammad, Guyana wanted foreigners with a socialist bent who were willing to develop the interior, and a mostly black, ostensibly Christian movement seemed like the perfect way to get it done. The idea was all the more attractive due to Guyana's conflict with Venezuela over the Essequibo region. Jones would settle the borderlands, strengthen Guyana's claims to the area, and make it economically viable. He used his money to bribe police, army personnel, and officials to look the other way when reports of abuse surfaced, setting the scene for November 1978. After the tragedy, the Guyanese government, possibly aided by the United States, went into cover-up mode.
As an attorney, I've got to question how thorough their investigation is, or how thorough that trial is.
According to the testimony of Dr. Leslie Mutu, the pathologist assigned to the case, there was evidence of forcible injection and gunshot wounds on the vast majority of the bodies. That evidence was buried to make it look like a mass suicide.
These are the bodies of unidentified children. In place of names, just numbers on the boxes.
The People's Temple was around 70% African American in 1978 when the Jonestown Massacre occurred. Many followed Jim Jones because at one point he seemed like the real deal, seeking to turn Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech into reality. In this aspect, the People's Temple did well. Anyone was welcome there, including mixed-race couples whose marriages were illegal in many states until 1967. When Jones moved operations to San Francisco, his mostly black congregants saw him as their fighter in City Hall and in Sacramento.
All lies.
None of it was true.
I mean, he sold us a bill of goods.
In the end, this is perhaps the saddest part of the Jonestown saga. Was Jones the real deal who went mad with power, or was he always a manipulative sociopath? Survivors' accounts suggest the latter, meaning that Jones took advantage of some of America's most vulnerable and isolated. But to what end? Jones would have said it was for the revolution, but his bank accounts suggest it was the same old, money, power, and control over his fellow man.